The day is Monday, April 29th, 2019. Ray McGovern was an analyst at the Central Intelligence Agency from 63 to 90, and he chaired the National Intelligence Estimate in 1980, during the 1980s, and prepared for the President of the United States, the President's Daily Brief. So he had, you met Kennedy? Did you meet Kennedy?
No, I was too young to meet
You were
Kennedy.
too young to meet Kennedy, but you met Johnson?
Yeah.
Okay. You met Nixon?
Well, you know, the truth be told here, we got to be up front here. We did the President's Daily Brief way back starting under Kennedy. Then it was not called a PDB, it was called a pickle. President's Intelligence Checklist.
Ah, the pickle.
And Kennedy liked like 3-sentence little squibs. If you want to know more, you get on the horn. And in those days we had telephones and you call the analyst, and he did. Okay. Then gradually became more polished. But the truth be told, starting with Kennedy, we had an access there through the National Security Council advisor. And that's how usually the head of the CIA reports to the president, through the National Security Council advisor. He or she is called the president's assistant for national security affairs. She doesn't have to be confirmed, or he doesn't have to be confirmed. So it's really the president's own person. Now, if you go forward to Nixon and Carter, we never saw the president. Never. I mean, Kissinger would take the President's Daily Brief and he'd mark it all up, and he might tear out a page or so and give it to the president, and there's a bunch of crotch.
You're not a Kissinger fan.
Well, no. I have to confess that he did one really good thing, and that was he saw that he could play the Russians off against the Chinese. Not many people realize that what he did in sending Nixon to Beijing, and then coming back to the Russians, saying, now you're going to be serious about arms control or not? And I said, oh yeah, we will be. That was 1972. That did it. I was there.
Mel Goodman agrees with you completely on that. What I'll say is they sacrificed Cambodia in the process, and then they let the Chinese run roughshod over Cambodia, and what the Khmer Rouge did was a copy, in some sense, of what Mao did, and they slaughtered each other, and it's gross.
Well, that's Kissinger for you.
Yes.
Look at the Kurds. Look at all these people. Don't matter, You know, if I have a theology, it's this. It all depends on who you think God is and how God feels when little people get pushed around. Right?
Go
The
on.
God I believe in.
Make the case. Flesh it out for me.
Well, if you don't realize that Yahweh of the Hebrew Scriptures and Jesus of the New Testament and the prophet themselves only cared about one thing, and that was that we do justice. Okay? The rest of it is all trappings.
So that's your reading of it. Your reading of it is it's all about justice.
Well, it's not my reading. It's all of the, erudite biblical scholars who don't believe in the rapture. For God's sake, who don't take things so literally. Look at what Jesus said. Look what he did. Look why he died. He didn't die to save us from our sins. He died to give us an example of what happens. What happens to people who are loyal to the vision of justice for all, and the sorrow and the glory that comes to that? And
they get cut down by the
empire.
Of any age, and it's as true today as it was back then.
Religious authorities, civil authorities, the Romans, but it was really the Jewish authorities that did them in. So we expect that, and Dan Berrigan is one of my patron saints, and what he used to say is, look, you got to have realistic expectations here. People say, when they did Catonsville, for example, was it worth it? And in his autobiography, Dan says, that was a good question. And I sat in that federal building, the only federal building in Catonsville was the post office. So he said, I mulled it over. I said, I finally came to the conclusion, well, yes, the good is worth doing because it's good. Results are not unimportant, but they're secondary to the goodness of the act, okay? And so I felt really good about it. He says, Americans are fixated on success, but success, it's not unimportant, but it's secondary. And then, I have to add this, he has this incredible sense of humor, and he's a poet, of course.
What's his name?
Daniel Berrigan, Jesuit priest.
Berrigan. Daniel Berrigan.
Yeah.
Barrigan.
Errigan, yeah.
Okay.
He was the first real war resistor. He and his brother Phil was also a priest, and they burned their draft cards, and they did all kinds of stuff.
Oh, so that was early 60s.
Oh, yeah. Well, mid-60s, late 60s. So, I guess my point is that as I go around the country, people say, well, why do you do this? You're not only not going to persuade anybody, you're not even going to get into print. You're not even going to get on radio or television. Why do you do this? And then I say, well, the good is worth doing because it's good. It's good to spread some truth around. And, as for results, well, I.F. Stone famously said, you got to go into this open-minded. You got to realize that you're going to lose. And they're going to lose. But then you're going to lose again. But then, one day, somebody who thinks like you is going to win. Okay? Now, in the meantime, you got to approach this with a certain detachment, a certain realization that, he didn't say this, but what Dan Berrigan said is true. The good is worth doing because it's good. You might not live to see the results of your work, but my comrades and I in Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity are used to pursuing the good without fear or favor, the truth, okay? Now, if you don't have truth, you can't have justice. If you don't have justice,
it's not possible.
That's right. Yeah. So justice depends on truth, and in turn, peace depends on justice. The biblical word for peace denotes living in justice. Okay, tzedakah. Okay, living shalom. Living in justice. And so you can't really live in justice. You can't really live in peace without justice, and you can't have justice without truth. That's how I put it all together. I do believe in this God of justice. I do believe that he or she, let's face it, we have this mannequin idea of God with the big beard and all that. I don't think God has a big beard. I think it's a likely, that doesn't matter. But what does matter is what we know from the Hebrew tradition, and that goes right down to the prophet, of course, who is out of the same tradition, and we know without any doubt that this concept in Aramaic, tzedakah, which meant justice, meant actually living in justice, doing justice, and the rest of it was all trappings, okay? So you get these Jesuits without the Salvador or Central America, that's what they were doing. They were killed? Well, yeah, they were killed, but that's the price you sometimes have to pay. After all, the guy they follow, this Jesus of Nazareth guy, paid the same price.
Right, well said, and that was going to be my first question, to get the background of your beliefs, and I got them. So the Catholicism really took hold of you when you were a little boy, and it's never left you. Well, you can call it Catholicism, but the gospel of Jesus Christ. I mean, the Catholics are another matter.
That's it.
But that realm, your understanding of that realm.
I owe a lot to the church and my education and my moral upbringing. Now, the other part is the ridiculous autocratic nature of the Pope and the whole setup there. That the last thing Jesus intended.
Right.
People don't realize that, so most of my Catholic friends are tied into this ethos where, if the Pope says something, it's got to be true. Well, not only is that not true, but on moral issues of great consequence, starting with World War II, which I know the best, the Pope not only said the wrong thing, but didn't say anything.
Right.
That silence from the Vatican was deafening.
Yeah.
And without that, without a preoccupation to keep the churches open, keep the churches open, that was it. Doesn't matter what happened to the Jews. My God, and that's a little overstatement, but not by much. Hitler saw that. He worked out these deals, So it was true then, and it's true now. You have this male-dominated, exclusively male hierarchy. Much of it is older than I am, for God's sake, and that's pretty old. And they're still in this little atmosphere where they have to salute smartly and tell women, for example, that if they have an abortion, it goes straight to hell. Oh my God, what can't? That's not the Jesus that I know. What did he say about abortion? Well, actually, he didn't say anything about abortion. They made it up. And they made up, all male clergy. They make it up as they go along, and they're still making it up, and they're still being silent about issues of war.
Right, and it's deviant from the original Gospels of Jesus Christ, which are quite pure and beautiful when you understand what the original Gospels are.
Yeah. If you understand them. And so
what I take the most out of it is they punch you, and then you look at it and say, you must be a suffering person such that you would have to punch me. So if you need to punch somebody, you can punch me again. See, most of us can't do that. It's astonishing, and it works too. If you do that to somebody, even a big bully, they will cave right in. It's astonishing, the power of it.
Well, the theologians looked into what Jesus said about turning the other cheek, right? It's not what you think. A centurion could hit you on this cheek. That was okay. That was his prerogative. He was not allowed to hit you on this cheek.
Oh, that's what it is.
It was disgrace. You couldn't do it. So that's what it was about.
Oh, I see.
That's why you have this exegesis today, which is so rich and so unknown to most of the traditional Christian churches, or Jewish churches for that matter. Jewish guys.
You were in the Army before you joined the CIA, and you were in Vietnam, right?
No, it's not in Vietnam, but I served during the Vietnam War.
Did you go to Fort Huachuca?
No, that wasn't created yet. It was Fort Halliburton in Baltimore. That's where the intelligence school was.
Okay, and so what did you learn there, and what kind of stuff did you work on that later served you? Soviet foreign policy with respect to China and Indonesia, I read.
Well, this context goes back to my key decision after freshman year in college. Fordham. They had an incredible Russian institute. They had Russian teachers. I took Russian instead of French, native foreign language. And I really liked it. So when I came to pick my major, they insisted that we see a counselor. I said, what do you want to do? I said, major in economics. She said, oh, you like economics? I said, well, I don't know. Have you had a course? No, I haven't. But I think, it'd be good to know something about money, and I may be a lawyer like my dad, and, He looked at me like I had two heads. He said, is there no course that you like now? I said, well, you're going to find this funny, but yeah, I really like this Russian. I'm good at it, and it's just really fun. He said, well, major in Russian. And this is 1959, okay? 1959. So I said, yeah, that sounds weird to me, but I went to talk to my dad, and my dad says, of course, college is to do something you like. You have to take all these other courses as well, especially at a Jesuit university like that. But yeah, go ahead. So that was the fateful decision. Majored in Russian, took a master's in Russian. The Army put my call to active duty. I was in ROTC. They put my call to active duty back a year.
Second lieutenant?
Second lieutenant, yeah. And then when I got when I got my master's degree, I was called to active duty on November 3rd, 1962. And when I got to Fort Benning to train with the other infantry officers, had to train in infantry first before intelligence, there were no weapons to train with.
Shortage.
There was this great big grenade launcher, big thing. Oh man, it's good. There's a new weapon. Where are they? A division came through here 3 weeks ago, headed south, and they took all our weapons. Cuban Missile Crisis. That's how close we were. They're all down in Key West. All the weapons, even the tanks.
Did you get scuttlebutt about it, or did they keep it
Well,
pretty
no,
low?
it was just a matter of, we drove down there with a little baby girl right after Kennedy faced down Khrushchev. And we were breathing easy, but those guys were still ready to go. And the Joint Chiefs of Staff would have gone if Kennedy had winked at them, much less said, yeah, you can go. So that's how close we came to not being around here today, okay?
Right, and that one Soviet submarine commander, and I tweeted about him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember his name?
I do, but it'll take me.
Yeah, it'll take me too. But anyway, he's a hero.
Oh,
He
sure
saved
he
us
is.
all.
He saved everyone, yeah. And he was a political guy. Okay?
Isn't that interesting?
He was, we denigrate these
Commissars.
Right, exactly. But he was the guy that had to, since he was on this one boat, he had to agree to put the key, And there was nothing to be gained there was a lot to be lost by just not doing that. But he told them, no, we don't have permission from Moscow, we're not going to do it. Now, that's happened several times.
And he had
since.
to fight his other guys
Of
that were
course.
ready to do it.
Yeah, I don't know if Mel Goodman told you about what happened back in 1983, but it was the same sort of thing, where we came this close to a nuclear war. with
No,
Russia.
Colby told me about it.
Colby told you.
Yeah, and
Well-
and we're going to talk about it at the end off the record.
Well,
No,
Mel-
but we can talk about it on the record
Yeah.
now. But yes,
Mel-
Colby told me in person.
Yeah, well, Mel was one of the gutsiest guys at CIA, and when he saw all the signs that the Russians were reading this major CPX control command post exercise, including the vice president, including including provocations on the border with bombers and all kinds of stuff. When he saw that the Russians didn't think it was the real thing, he goes to Bobby Gates. Bobby Gates was, well, they worked for me, so I still call him Bobby. He was the head of analysis at the time under Bill Casey. And we all worked together, the same branch. I was the branch chief, Mel and Bobby Gates and several other highlights were really good analysts. So Gates said, forget about it. We get scared of Russians a little. It's so fun, So Goodman said, screw that. He went right to Casey. And he said, look, you should know that this is going on. And if you don't go down to the White House and tell them to knock it off, it's going to be over for all of us. Casey went down to the White House. The only time Casey did anything Mel Goodman told him to do, to Mel's credit. But, that was 1983, right after the KAL 007 went down, right after Reagan's talking about the evil empire, how we ought to, cream them, and the KGB and the Soviet secret police were all over the world trying to find out, exactly what we were planning. They took it for real. And so that's 1983. What was that called? I'll remember the code name for it in a second. But so these things have happened. Why do I mention this now? Because with the same situation now. We used to have about 30 minutes warning. And if we didn't have that 30 minutes warning, this incident in 1983 would be not here, okay? Now where are we at? Well, if we put these medium-range ballistic missiles back in Europe, the ones that were destroyed in 1987 under the INF, Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, the Russians destroyed all their SS-20s. We destroyed all our Pershing IIs and a couple of cruise missiles. I couldn't believe it. I was still in activity. I couldn't believe that this could happen, in that day and age. But it did. Now, it's all over. And so what's the time now that the Russians have to decide if we're serious now?
Well, they have a dead man switch, don't they, or something like that?
Well, they have a lot of automatic stuff, and that's the worry here. As long as these three indicators go off together, the human can't be involved because it's only 9 or 10 minutes to make the decision. Now, somebody asked Putin during his election, this is back a year and a half ago, Mr. Putin, if the Americans launch a strategic strike on Russia, it's too late. You can't defend against that because there's no anti-ballistic missile. Do you think that would you really destroy the rest of the world too? I mean, what would be the point? Russia's going to be destroyed, and would you really fire your missiles? He looked at the guy like he had two heads, and he said, "What would the world be without Russia? What would the world be without Russia?" So, even though it makes logical sense that you shouldn't destroy the whole planet, well, there's no doubt in my mind that Putin's going to release those strategic weapons when the 3 or 5 or how many indicators all show up on your screen, and that'll be the end of all of us.
And therefore, we should be friends with the Russians or Putin or whoever is their leader.
Well, therefore, we should be talking to them. Therefore, we shouldn't be preoccupied as our military, industrial, congressional, intelligence, media,
complex,
academia, think tank complex. I call it the Mickey Mat. Okay.
The Mickey Mat.
Mickey Mat. Yeah.
And not letting it dictate to us.
Well,
being humans instead of listening to
That's the
them.
whole name of the game.
Right,
If you don't
but
have
this
an
is where
enemy-
you differ with Mel Goodman. He said, "Don't lump me in." He also has great affection for you, as you do for him, and great respect. But you two differ, Grand Canyon wise, on this. He doesn't chain himself to to military forts and stuff, and he doesn't get slammed down in Hillary Clinton briefings. You know, you do, but I love you for that, and he loves you for that. So this is a difference between you.
I don't understand the difference.
What did he say yesterday, Mike? What did Mel Goodman say yesterday? It's
He's
just
got a book out on this, which is very, very good.
I think you're talking about technique as opposed to philosophical background. He's saying that you were committed to it in a more your body and soul. I think that's what you were saying.
right.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's, those are personality differences. There's no
I
difference.
don't know. I
no
think
difference
it's
in substance.
no substance is the same, but you take risks, man. You go out. He's not going to get tied up in a Hillary Clinton speech and dragged away by police, but you will be.
Well, yeah, but that's no reflection on him. It's
No,
just
it's no,
that-
it's
yeah.
not. It's not. I'm not.
Most people-
I'm just showing the
yeah.
difference between you two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I accept
Right,
that, yeah.
but nevertheless, your colleagues on the substantive, important things, and he's VIP. Is he VIPs too?
No,
No.
Mel is one who likes to do independent stuff. and,
Right, right. That's what I mean.
A couple of folks
That's
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. But anyway, he's I can see that there's a lot of mutual respect there. Anyway.
Well, sure, we worked together for a long time. He was one of the few people who refused to buckle under Bobby Gates and Casey when they said the Russians are the root of all evil. When the Secretary of State, General, what's his name? I'll think of it in a second, said we want to write a national intelligence estimate showing that the Russians are behind all terrorism in the world.
In the 80s?
This is when Casey came in 1981. Okay, Alexander Haig was the name I was searching for.
Oh, Haig,
He
right.
said the Russians are behind everything, and so do an estimate showing that. And
Haig was never the brightest bulb in the room.
no, and Mel Goodman said, well, we'll do an estimate, but it's not going to come out the way you want it. I said, all right, we'll do the estimate. So they did, and they said, the Russians are against this as much against terrorism as we are. They've got real problems in the southern part of Russia. They don't like terrorist activity, and so there's no evidence except for Claire Sterling, who lived in Italy and wrote lots of nice books about how the Russians behind every evil in the world. Claire Sterling was a favorite of Bill Casey, the director, and so he said, well, no. He said, what we'll do now is we'll do a different estimate, and he sequestered 5 malleable analysts. When I say malleable, I mean people who sniff the right way to get promoted, the right way to get a managerial job.
Gates.
And they said, well,
Bobby Gates.
Gates is the personification of that, but you need underlings as well. And so they set up a whole different office, the Office of Global Research. And they gave all the evidence. They said, now, see if you could come up with a different answer. And guess what? They did. And guess what? They all got promoted. And guess what? They were the ones that falsified the intelligence on Iraq. There were no WMD.
That same crowd went up and up and up
Yeah.
and did the fall. And Tenet was with him as a junior operational lieutenant.
Now, Tenet came out of the congressional sphere, which is even worse. I mean, everything there is political.
Political,
Yeah.
right.
But he had no guts at all, and when Cheney told him to do something, he did it, and he found people who would do it as his lieutenants. So what Americans really need to realize is that the intelligence before Iraq about weapons of mass destruction, or about Saddam Hussein having ties with Al-Qaeda, that wasn't a mistake.
It was a deliberate fabrication.
It was, it was fraud, out and out fraud.
Out now.
And there were hundreds of analysts at CIA and elsewhere who knew that to be the case. Not one spoke out. There was
Not one.
Not one. Now,
Because they're on the payroll.
well, it was before WikiLeaks, I would say, and Colleen Rowley, the FBI.
I've been in touch with her thanks to you.
Yeah. Well, she was, she was the advisor to the Minneapolis FBI office, And so she was right in the thick of things when they got Musawi and when they were looking at all that stuff. So she has written a memo together with a man named Bogdan Zakovich, who's Bogdan Zakovich. He was head of the Red Team. The
Red Team, Blue Team.
Federal Aviation Administration, Red Team. What was their job? To infiltrate airports, to get on airplanes with bombs, to see how vulnerable our aircraft were. They got onto so many aircraft that were shut down. Head of the FAA says, disband this Red Team. You're an embarrassment. Okay, that's just right before 9/11. The point I'm trying to make is that Colleen Rowley, Bogdan Zakovich wrote an op-ed, which was published in the LA Times, and it said, what if WikiLeaks was around in those days? Would you have gone out of channels? Would you have gone to WikiLeaks because you knew what was coming? Pretty much, you got it really. It was not only Minneapolis. It was Arizona. It was Florida. And there were all kinds of stuff the FBI alone had. Okay, would you have done that? They said yes, we would. That's big. Okay.
What are you saying about 9/11?
What am I saying about 9/11? Well, I'm saying that the 9/11 Commission was a disgrace. I mean, 9 politicians.
Come on, you got nothing to lose, buddy. Your kids are all taken care of. You got a pension. Tell it like it is. What about 9/11?
What about it?
Yeah.
Well, the 9/11 Commission punted. The heads of the commission, the co-chairman, wrote a book 2 years after their report saying it was set up to fail. We weren't given enough time.
Sounds like the Warren Commission.
We weren't given enough money. We weren't given enough expertise. No, we weren't given enough access to classified information. So we were set up to fail. Well, isn't that neat? Isn't that just great? You know?
Who benefits?
Hamilton, the head of this Democrat that they tried out for such things, that the Governor Kane from New Jersey. I mean, they know they were participating in a charade, you know? So when people say, oh, wait a second now, those people who are trying to get the truth on 9/11, they're conspiracy theorists. Well, that's BS, okay? They're not conspiracy theorists. I come from New York. I spent my first 22 years there. I have lots of friends there. Some of them died. One cousin, okay?
You lost a cousin in 9/11.
My wife's cousin, yeah. So we have a big stake in this, okay? And we don't like to hear that we were set up to fail, you know? So when they're looking into the particulars, which are very, very suspect, I applaud them. I say that's exactly what you should do. And when people call you conspiracy theorists, you should realize that the first time that was used, and so successfully,
JFK.
yeah, was Allen Dulles. Allen Dulles was the head of the CIA during the Bay of Pigs operation, which they tried to mousetrap Kennedy and his committing forces so that they'd go overthrow Castro. Well, Kennedy cashiered him. Well, you don't cashier somebody that belongs to the establishment.
You got a bullet in his
as
head for his effort.
Yeah. Now, what's my point? My point is, after the dust settled, they set up the Warren Commission. And who was the most influential person on the Warren Commission? A fellow named Allen Dulles. My God, wasn't that interesting? And so there was some rumors in the press, you know, well, we think the CIA might have been involved. And I said, what do you say? Conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory. And that's what they say about 9/11. That's what they say about Russiagate. It's
You're a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, don't listen.
Gonna slap the label
It's-
on you,
yeah.
everybody.
It's
Conspiracy
not
theorist.
It's not the right narrative. Yeah. So yeah, well, we're used to that. We do have certain breakthroughs, and I'm confident that on this Russiagate thing, we will have been proven to have been true for almost 3 years now, and pointing to forensics. Okay. Now, when I was a national intelligence officer, that's about as high as you get. I worked directly for Bill Colby. Okay. I'll give you an example of how that works. I was Bill Colby's representative for everything having to do with Western Europe in those days, the 70s, okay? And we had lots of action. We had the dictator in Spain dying. We had the communists going to get into the government, Italy. And we had Cyprus. Let's talk about Cyprus. The Turks invade Cyprus and take over good almost half of it, okay? What arms did they use? They used U.S. weapons, of course. That's what they had, okay? So what did Congress do? Congress imposed an embargo. We will not sell any more weapons to Turkey until they get out of Cyprus. What did Kissinger do? Oh, this is terrible. Turkey is the anchor of the NATO alliance in the East. We got it. And he was angry as hell. And he wanted to use every argument he could to show that Congress made a big mistake. It was really like this. And that Congress had to reverse its decision. So what do? I'm the National Intelligence Officer for Western Europe. I say, well, Kissinger is saying that if the Turks kick us out of our intelligence gathering bases in Turkey, it'll be all over. We can't
Watch the Russians, we can't watch
go.
U-2s, we can't do anything.
So I said, I don't know if that's true. So I go to Bill Colby and I said, I don't think that's true, Bill. I'd like you to commission me to arrange a memorandum that we send to Kissinger and Congress, and we say that's not true, if that's what this specialist is saying. He said, okay. So he said, before you leave, call Admiral Showers right away. He's on the intelligence community staff. He knows chapter and verse about all this. So the government calls Admiral Showers. Can you come to my office? Comes to my office. I tell him what the problem is. He said, no problem. In 2 months, we have the most sophisticated overhead satellites that will collect chapter and verse, much more than we can ever collect of this land bases in Turkey. So if they kick us out, we'll have to compensate for 2 months, but it's going to be, forget about it, not a problem. I said, will you write that up? Okay, writes it up. I fix it up, get the political stuff, and we send it out to Kissinger. You want to know why Kissinger didn't like Colby? Because Colby told the truth. And that was the worst thing for Kissinger's vendetta against Congress, because Congress had that. Say, look, hey, come on, Kissinger, you're telling us that we'll be in a disaster if we lose our bases in Turkey. The intelligence community says, no, that's not true. They have lots of it. So that's the kind of thing that you can do, okay? So now what am I saying? I'm saying, look, when you have something like the capability of our intelligence collection facilities in Turkey, a discrete technical thing, and you have experts with no access to grind who know chapter and verse about it, for a national intelligence officer, thank you, Jesus. That's exactly what you need, right? There's no fuzzy political analysis.
It's the truth.
Communists aren't so bad. They get into the Italian government. This is the truth. This is the forensic truth, okay? It depends on the principles of physics, okay? Why do I say all that? Because that's what we've got on Russiagate.
Right.
Now, when I looked at these charges about hacking into, the Russians hacked into the DNC, I said, well, now, even hacking, even surreptitious intrusions leave a trail. Oh, who's the best guy? Bill Binney. He's right in our little group. Let's go to Bill. Well, what do you think? Well, first thing he thought, well, doesn't sound likely to me, but let me check. And he looked at the charts that Ed Snowden had brought out into Hong Kong. And he said, my God, if the Russians intruded, NSA ipso facto has the intrusions, has the messages, the intercepts, okay? He says, Ray, look, every email or everything like that's broken down into little packets, and they're all labeled, okay? And they go, and at the other end, since they're all labeled and put together, it only takes a second, but that's how it is. Now, so the NSA knows every one of these packets, and here's the chart that Ed Snowden brought out, and it shows the trace routes, where the trace points are to trace all this traffic. And in the off chance that we uncover it, then the Brits or the Australians or New Zealand or Canada can't do it. So couldn't be. NSA would have it. Well, that was the first thing. And then we started looking into other things like transfer rate, how rapidly you could transfer emails over a system, and how rapidly you could with a thumb drive just a copy. And then our latest thing is we know that this Guccifer 2, this very shadowy figure, was not a Russian. He's not a Romanian. We can tell that from syntax. Now, why is it that we have to do this work? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the authorities, the establishment, doesn't want it. Trump wants it. He asked Bill Binney, hey, look.
Trump asked Bill Binney.
Trump asked Pompeo, who was head of the CIA. This was in October 2 years ago. So he says, Mike Pompeo, you head of CIA. I just read, or people just briefed me on this VIPS memo, and they say that there wasn't a Russian hack. Now, I'm told through other sources that if you really want to know all about this hacking, you need to talk to Bill Benny, who used to be technical director at the NSA.
Yeah. That's not a small job, by the way.
No. So, so Trump says, talk to him. So, on October 24th,
Here comes Pompeo.
2 years ago, Pompeo invites Bill Binney into his office, and he says, now, Mr. Binney, the first thing I need to tell you is that you're here at the direction of the president. The president told me to invite you. That's the genesis of this visit. He said, says Pompeo, the president told me that if I wanted to know all about Russian hacking, that I should talk to you, Bill Binney. Bill Binney is a very plain-spoken fellow from
I like him. Mike likes him.
Western Pennsylvania, and he doesn't flavor his words.
No.
So he said, well, Mr. Pompeo, you should know that your people are lying to you. Pompeo said, lying to you? Yeah. They served up a whole bunch of analysis. They don't even call it analysis, they call it assessments, which means that in the military, we used to call that a swag factor. I don't know if you served that.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
A swag factor is a scientific wild ass guess. Okay? So
Right.
that's what an assessment is.
Right,
Yeah.
right, we
Now,
assess.
Bill Binney hates assessments. He hates them. Yeah, like
Like,
plague,
right? Because they're not true.
That's right. Well, because
It's a
guess
opinion.
what?
It's
Guess what?
opinion.
He's a mathematician, for God's sake.
Oh.
And the brightest mathematician most people have ever met. So he said, look,
He is
Mr.
bright.
Pompeo, this is what's happening. You want me to prove it? I'll prove it. Well, we had 2 flunkies for them. No indication that they were with the cyber group. So then Pompeo says, well, do you have any contact with the FBI?
Everton, family to the front desk, please.
And Bill says, well,
Everton, family to the front desk,
About
please.
6 years ago, 12 of them descended on my house at 6:30 in the morning and stole all the papers and machinery in my office, put a gun to the head of my son, and got me in a shower and had a loaded gun to my head.
So yes, I do have contact.
Yeah, that's the last time I talked to see. He said, well, how about NSA? And Bill says, well, you know, NSA is they know me up there, but they know what I'm going to tell them is true. So the problem is not me telling them it's true. How about you? You want to tell them? You want to tell them what I just said, or I'd be happy to debate with them right here in this office. So Pompeo said, well, I think we should follow up. If you're saying my people are lying to me, we need to follow up. Do you have? Well, so they left it. Bill was supposed to call him Comey. He said, hey, Pompeo said I should give you a briefing on how your people are lying to you, and you too. And he called up Rogers and said, I mean, it was so ridiculous. Now, what am I saying here? I'm saying that Trump was interested in finding out what the real score was. Was he able to do that? No. Why? Because Pompeo and the rest of them, you know, I call them fat and skinny.
Close the ranks.
Pompeo and Bolton, you know, fat and skinny, had a race up and down. Well, these guys can prevent the president from learning the truth. What's important now? There's one guy that knows how the Democratic National Committee emails got to WikiLeaks. His name is Julian Assange.
And he knows it.
Of course he knows it. You know, he was on the receiving end of it.
And
Now-
you went and gave him you gave Snowden an award, but you visited him at the Ecuadorian embassy in London.
Oh yeah, a couple of times.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine.
I support him too.
I
I
know
support him too. Chomsky does too.
Yeah, I'm a very big admirer of him. He's one of the people who are willing to suffer for justice' sake, and just like Manning.
And
Chelsea
anybody
Manning.
who's serious in the media, they should be supporting him. Otherwise, they're prostitutes.
Josie Manning and Ed Snowden, they're all people who were willing to pay the price for getting the truth out because they saw the danger to our liberties. So what do I mention Julian Assange? Well, he can tell President Trump who did it. He has offered In March of 2017, Julian's lawyers went to the Justice Department and said, look, we would like to get some limited immunity for Julian Assange. In return, he is willing to redact some of the very sensitive parts of your cyber tools that someone leaked to him, not hacked, leaked. That's what they call it, WikiLeaks, right? He gets leaks, okay? So he's willing to redact some of that stuff. And, most important, he's willing to tell you who didn't do it, who didn't give the DNC emails to WikiLeaks. And he knows. Okay, so these negotiations go on. There's a Department of Justice lawyer who represents the CIA, the normal practice. That's the client. There's the institution and Department of Justice lawyer. They negotiated for a couple of months. Okay, and then in the end, Julian smelled a rat. His name was Laufman. Right? Anyhow, word got to Senator Mark Warner from Virginia that Julian Assange was willing to say who didn't do it. And up till now, he's just been saying it wasn't a state.
That was all he said.
Yeah. So Mark Warner said, now he's the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, right? So he says, oh, we don't want that. I mean, our whole Russiagate thing will fall apart. He's one of the most avid promoters of Russiagate. Warner, yeah. He's way out supporting Russiagate and the Russians.
He's a Republican, right?
No, he's a Democrat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what happens? Warner calls the head of the FBI. His name is James Comey. I said, did you know this is going on? He goes, my God, no, shut it down. I shut it right down. That was the end of March 2017. What did Julian do? At the end of March, he published one cyber tool that the CIA had developed called Marble Framework. It allows you to hack into a computer or server, disguise who hacked in, leave little breadcrumbs pointing to someone other than you that hacked in.
Lucifer.
And they worked in 5 languages: Chinese, Korean, Persian, Arabic,
And Russian.
yeah. So Cyrillic. So he released that, and that's when, well, less than 2 weeks later, Pompeo got up and said, WikiLeaks is a non-state.
Looks like, smells like,
Right.
acts like.
It's a non-state hostile intelligence service, WikiLeaks. And that's when they really got the screws on. That's when they went out to Ecuador and got the governments, we'll give you an IMF loan and we'll do this and that for you.
What's the damage? So Julian stands up and says, this came from here, and then,
Yeah.
right?
So
But
then
that
what
gives
hap-
him the basis for cleaning house, exactly what you
Well,
want.
what I'm saying is that Trump could cause that to happen, but he doesn't have the courage, or he's been advised, don't take on the intelligence community. They have 6 ways
From Sunday,
get
according
back
to
at
Schumer.
you. Exactly.
Fuck that. You've been in that. I don't think so. I'm an American,
Well,
and I'd like to go in there with a wire
Yeah,
brush.
well, so
because
would I.
I don't want these guys deciding that we go to war against some poor innocent people and kill them off. That's not what I stand for.
Yeah.
And I think you're exactly the same.
Yeah, the problem is not us. The problem is the president. Even Obama.
Who's got? Oh, Obama's puppet show, but Trump, at least he's rich already. Like maybe it's possible for him to say this to some of those guys, right?
Then why doesn't he? Why does he?
Well, I'm asking you. You're the insider. I'm just this journalist
Yeah.
struggling to make a living. But you
Why
were
does he
inside.
announce 2 years ago that Congress has passed a law that I have to release the remainder of the evidence on the JFK assassination?
I remember that.
And I have to do that today. And I'm happy to tell you that we are going to do that. And then that will be the end of this one. Okay? That was 9 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Trump gets up and he says, oh, I just talked to the Department of Justice, and the CIA and the FBI don't want me to release these, and so I'm going to put it off for 6 months until they have a chance. Now they had 20 years to figure it out.
But what is it? Somebody came
So
up
what
and said.
happened? What happened after 6 months? I made a little note in my journal, make sure you find out, Not only was nothing said, nobody asked any questions from the mainstream media. They don't want to know. Now, if you want to know the CIA's interface with the New York Times, interface is the wrong kind of noun here. It's one and the same. Russiagate got started because of John Brennan talking to the New York Times, said this is what we're going to do. This is where, number one, this is where we're going to divert attention from what's in those DNC emails, which showed that Hillary stole the nomination
From Bernie,
Sanders.
who would have probably defeated Trump.
And we get everybody saying, why do the Russians do this? Why the Russians? And nobody would look at the content of these emails. That's number one. And number two, if later we need to use this Russian card, we'll do it. Of course, later they did need. So, if I were not guided by this notion that the truth will ultimately set us free, I would be in despair now. The evidence is all out there. Devin Nunes, the head of the House
I like him.
Intelligence. Well, he's he's a congressman from the Central Valley. You know what he did? He gave an award to one of the USS Liberty survivors.
I remember that you are active in that, and I've read the whole deal on that. And the Israelis came up, tried to kill them all. These guys fought back, and then Kissinger and the gang tried to cover it up. And it's a disgusting chapter. And what they tried to do is blame it on the Egyptians and have the Americans intervene in the Yom Kippur War.
I like to blame Kissinger for a lot of stuff, but now this was Lyndon Johnson.
Oh, the Johnson's deal. Okay.
But suffice it.
Was that Yom Kippur, or was that before that?
The first one's
Well, it was
67.
67. Right. I'm getting it mixed up with Colby. I asked Colby what his decisive moment on the world stage was, and he said it was Yom Kippur. And what happened is that the Moshe Dayan, with a patch on his eye, was heading for Cairo in his tanks, and the Russians were freaking out, and there was cloud cover, and the satellites couldn't see if the Soviets had got on the transports or not. And Colby had to get on the phone to the Russians and say, we'll do what we can to stop the Israelis. You will not intervene in the Middle East. You will not. And that was, he said, his moment on the world stage for his life. Does that ring true to you?
Yeah, well, Colby is a straight shooter. That's why they killed him.
Right. He was professionally wasted by a Navy SEAL team, I think.
Whatever. He was an expert canoeist, and you don't leave your dinner half-eaten
But when he received me at his home in Georgetown on Dent Street, it was fantastic. And he mentioned the Club of Rome 3 times. 3 times during the interview. The Club of Rome said this, the Club of Rome said that, the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome, he said, predicted that it was 92 when I interviewed him, the Club of Rome predicted that we'd be in starvation and massive because of the population growth and the food production capacity. We'd be in starvation right now. He says, we're not in starvation now. And so he was trying to tell me something. Mm-hmm. He was trying to tell me something about the Club of Rome. And my subsequent research has indicated this is the big bullshit factory. And they're, global warming. It's true, global warming, but they're cooking it for their own reasons. Mm-hmm. See what I mean? So both are true, I think.
No, not on that. Global warming is pure and simple scientific fact.
No, right, it's a scientific fact.
My grandchildren are not going to have clean air to breathe.
Right, but there's other agendas too that want to roll in with it.
There's always that, yeah. But getting back to Trump, he's not his own man, and people need to know that. He wants to pull troops out of Syria, all of them, and the military says, no, you can't do that, and so he can't do that. There are endless examples.
Who's pulling his chain?
Well, we call it the deep state. It's the guys in the CIA, the guys in the Defense Department primarily, the guys all over.
This is where you differ with Mel. Mel says there's no deep state.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and so that's the Grand Canyon between you two, and I'm more on your side of the program.
Well,
my dad's a farm boy from Michigan. He got sent out to Vietnam. He was a first aircraft pilot. He got decorated. He saved a lot of asses by flying through hails of bullets, and then he came back weirded out, and my mom divorced him. My family was destroyed by the Vietnam War, and the Vietnam War was caused by the military-industrial complex and Johnson. Yeah. And so that's my motivation, Ray. I want you to understand.
Well, it's so damn clear. How many times does Trump have to bow to the military-industrial complex. How many times does he have to curry favor with the Saudis, despite their despicable? Why did he veto the bill that would disconnect us from the atrocities that are going on against Yemeni children and women and everybody else there in Yemen? It's because he's not powerful, or he doesn't believe that he's powerful enough. We said to him in our latest memo, one on the Mueller thing.
So he reads your memos?
Well, we know that either he read it or somebody gave him an excerpt of it in July of 2017, because that's when he told Pompeo, hey, you got to talk to this Bill Binney fellow, okay? So there are people who know about us, even though we never can get in the mainstream press, even though we can't even get on Amy Goodman, for God's sake.
Yeah, and that, Amy Goodman. Okay, so
let me just finish your thought here.
Go on.
When Devin Nunes says, finally, and he's chair of the intelligence community at the time, he says, finally, we are going to get the supporting documentation for the FISA application, which used this faux memo called the dossier from Steele to justify intercepting or monitoring in an electronic way quarter page. We're going to get that. The president says, we're going to get that. I stipulate we're going to get that. Did they get it? No, they didn't get it. What did they get? A lot of gibberish from the Department of Justice, which is involved in this whole thing at the top. Loretta Lynch?
Yeah.
You know? So, last on this thing is this. 2 weeks ago, Devin Nunes said, I have 8 cases to make criminal referrals on to the Department of Justice. 8. And there'll be more.
S. Nauer family to the front desk, please.
Okay.
K-N-A-U-E-R family to the front
So
desk,
here's
please.
Devin Nunes,
Nauer.
who is now ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, says, it's within my power to do this. I have the goods on these people. We're referring these 8 people to the Justice Department. That means you referred for an indictment, okay? The indictment for messing around with our Constitution in 2016. Okay?
Rosenstein? Or
Yeah, well, it's all of them. So who are these 8 people? You know, I can name them, and it goes all the way up to Loretta Lynch.
come on, let's rattle them off now.
Sure, Buller, Comey, what's his name? The guy head of the CIA,
Brennan.
Rosenstein, and you know, you're talking about the Attorney General of the United
But
States.
they are all working for Obama.
Yeah.
And it's all kind of a
Well, you know, Obama was one of these guys that, well, okay, you think you can do that? Fine, I'm getting out of here. But what I'm saying here is that the problem that the American people have is understanding how it could possibly be that our top law enforcement, our top judicial, our top intelligence officials all could be involved in this soft coup or in this campaign to prevent Trump from becoming president. And the reason is simple. I mean, it really is not a big deal. And Comey has said it. When Comey was asked, why did he act in this way in October of 2016? He said, and I quote, we were operating in an environment where the next president of the United States was sure to be Hillary Clinton, period, end quote. Okay, now,
sure.
Yeah, now parse that. This is late October 2016. All right. Now that's what he's talking about. Now he's a couple of years later testifying. So what does that mean? Well, everybody, I don't know a soul, well, there probably are a couple of people that thought that Trump would win, but everyone had, you know, if you're sure that Hillary's going to win, and you help her along here by denigrating Trump or by subverting his campaign, by running agents against his campaign so that they could pin a collusion thing on him, which is very clear in the Mueller report, what's to lose? I mean, hello, you know, we're going to win, and then we'll get promoted, or at least we'll be able to stay in office. Brennan maybe
Very understandable.
So, okay.
Very understandable.
And so you know, as a result of that, that's called hubris, okay? As a result of that, they didn't even take care in hiding their tracks. It's all on the record. Devin Nunes and the guys in the Senate have all this stuff. It's on the record. We know how the the FISA, the court that has to give you a warrant to permit you to monitor U.S. citizens. We know how that application reads. We have a redacted version of it. Well, why doesn't Trump say, well, look, you guys, at least fire him? He has fired some of them. Why did he fire Comey?
I'll tell you why.
Why?
I'm an expert on J. Edgar Hoover.
Good.
Okay, I'm an expert.
Okay.
Okay, I've read all the books. I've interviewed tons of FBI
Good.
agents.
All right.
And when JFK appointed his brother Bobby Attorney General, Hoover had the goods on JFK when he was having sex with a beautiful Swedish lady when he was a lieutenant in the Navy in a hotel room. There was an FBI report of him banging this Nazi spy. And Hoover, as soon as JFK was elected and made Bobby the Attorney General, his brother, and they didn't like Hoover, everybody knew they didn't like Hoover, he went over to the Oval Office and he said, oh, Mr. Kennedy, we have this. We just want you to know that if this gets out, that it could be a problem for you. And that was the message to JFK. You fuck with me, buddy, I'm going to trash you. Okay. Comey tried the same thing. Comey tried the same thing on Trump. And Trump said, fuck you, and fired his dumb ass.
Well, he didn't.
No, that's not true? So what I said wasn't true?
You
That's my take.
No, you have the time sequence wrong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just that. It's a minor thing, but it's important here.
Okay.
On the 6th of January 2017, when Trump was president-elect, Comey, the Gang of Four, I call them, John Brennan, CIA, Admiral Rogers from NSA, Comey from FBI, and James Clapper, the head of...
Clapper!
Yeah.
Not wittingly. Not wittingly.
So here you have the confirmed perjurer, who admitted it and said, I'm really sorry.
But he's still on CNN as the expert, national security. Everybody can feel warm and cuddly with him on TV.
Okay, so they're the four going in there, right? Now, they had briefed the president. They had briefed Obama the day before, talking 5 January, okay? And they told him, we have this assessment with the swag factor, the scientific wild-ass guess, right? No evidence, but we think that that Putin directed his people to hack into the DNC and get their emails. Okay, and we're really sure about that. We're very confident, except the NSA, curiously enough, said no, we're just moderately confident. Well, if they had any evidence, it would have come from NSA. Anyhow, so what happens? The next day, after briefing Obama up and down about how Putin did this and gave them to WikiLeaks, right? Next day, these four appear in Trump's suite there, I guess in New York, or wherever he was.
Trump Tower.
Yeah, and so they say Clapper is the titular head of this group. He says, "Now, Mr. President, we want you to know that the President Obama commissioned a study about Russian interference in the election, and we've come up with this précis, and it says pretty much that you owe your election to the Russians." That's a nice way to start out, right? And so we see the Russian interference. We think Putin himself, and then Comey says, "Now, gentlemen, I have something very sensitive to share with the president. Could you please leave?" And the three of them, Brennan, Clapper, and Rogers from NSA, leave.
Exited the room.
So then, now your narrative comes in.
Yeah, right.
Then Comey says, "Now, Mr. President, I don't know how to begin telling you this, but we have this very salacious, salacious is the word report about you're cavorting with prostitutes.
And they urinated on you, Mr. President.
And it's just, we can't confirm it, but it's out there. Just like you said with JFK, it's out there, we have it, and we think the press is actually they may run with it sometime soon. So just so you know. Now, what I always say at this point is that if I were the president-elect at the time, I would say, Mr. Comey, thank you so much. Now go clear out your desk. You're not going to be around here in 10 days. So you have 10 days to clear out your desk. I don't want to see you again. And if you're smart, you keep your mouth shut. Oh, okay. But Trump, he's a New York guy. So he thought he could cajole Comey into becoming one of his team. And so he says, would you be loyal to me? And he asked some sort of things, and Comey said, whatever Comey says. So what happens then when it becomes clear that Comey has asked for about $20 million more to investigate Trump, and he does all kinds of other things against Trump, candidly against Trump. This is after becoming president. Trump fires him.
Yeah.
And then
He took the hits for that, too.
yeah, but here's what he said. First he has what's this Rosencrantz and Guildenstern? No,
Yeah, that's it.
Rosenstein, right?
Right.
He has him do out this legal memo, right? Okay. Well, it was true. I mean, he screwed up the Hillary investigation in spades. Okay, but then he's on the NBC or one of those channels the next day, and the guy says, "Well, why'd you really fire Comey?" I said, "What was this Russian thing?" Everybody says, cover up. That's there it is right there, the Russian thing. What was the Russian thing that Comey raised with him on the 6th of January 2017? We said, we have this Russian thing here, and it's and by now it has appeared, and we have the dossier. So that's the Russian thing. So Trump is unable to do the sensible thing. He can't keep his mouth shut, and when he opens it, he crucifies himself, and it's really sad to see because it was the Russian thing. It came, so it came 6 months after it should have. He should have fired Comey on the spot, but he thought he could, we could work this out, he can't be a very powerful guy, But he couldn't do that with Comey because Comey was deeply, deeply involved in preventing him from becoming president, and then after he was president, eviscerating him or emasculating him, lest he do something to reduce tensions with Russia. I mean, if you don't have an enemy, it's really hard to justify billions and billions and billions more of defense expenditures. Comey is one of the boys. The other boys are the guys in the Pentagon, the guys in CIA, and to pretend that this force doesn't exist, call it the deep state, call it whatever you want. Mickey Mouse is my favorite. But to pretend it doesn't exist, well, that defies imagination. So we do. Mel and I do.
I want to get you together with Mel and have you duke it out together
No, we
on
have-
this topic with me as the moderator and Mike on the camera. That I'd like to see that because it's worth it. There's juicy because both of you are serious brains and both of you came from that same place and both of you are a mutual admiration society, and so that would be really good.
Mhm.
So shape of things to come. I hope.
So